Good afternoon, friends. I hope everyone's doing well. Today, I'm going to go over a plus 14 miss run that I did. I want to go over this because I did it as Lightsmith AC, and a lot of people have been asking for some gameplay showcasing to kind of discuss the rotations and priorities and see how I play Mythic Plus as this talent spec. So, obviously, this is a coordinated environment. It's going to be a little bit different from Pugs. I will also do a Pug video coming soon, but for now, this is the only available video I had of me playing Lightsmith AC. I'm just going to kind of go over what my general rotation is like. If you are curious to see exactly what spells I'm casting, watch the top left of the screen here. So this first pull, one of the things you're going to see me do a lot is press Avenging Crusader basically on CD. One of the reasons I'm able to be so aggressive with Avenging Crusader in this build is because it's on a 1-minute cooldown, so it's up very frequently, and you don't really need to Divine Toll during it, so you can rotate between Awakening procs, Avenging Crusader casts, and Divine Toll, and so between those, you basically just always have a cooldown available to you. With Bulwark and Weapon, you want to just be pressing them on CD, use them as much as possible. The only rules with them are make sure that you don't overwrite existing weapons. Sometimes if it's just tank damage going out, you can overwrite the existing weapon on the tank, and that's not a big deal. But otherwise, like with DPS weapons, Sacred Weapon, make sure that you never ever overwrite that on somebody that already has one. There's no like priority system in terms of who gets weapon. It doesn't deal more damage if it goes on somebody dealing more damage. It doesn't deal more damage on higher APM specs. It doesn't matter. Just place it on a DPS player that doesn't already have a weapon. So straight off, obviously we're dispelling the tank, and then we're just going to be popping Avenging Crusader. Always inside of Avenging Crusader, you want to make sure your main buttons that you're pressing are Judgment and Crusader Strike. Those are what's going to be doing all of your healing in this build. So the more Judgments and Crusader Strikes that you can get out, the better. One important thing to keep in mind is obviously there. Daisha got hit by that ground effect, but fortunately, actually it was the frontal, but fortunately I had lay on hands and sack available for him, so he didn't die. Something to keep in mind is you're going to see me weaving in Holy Power Spenders and Crusader Strikes because of the hero talent Blessed Assurance, which each time you use a Holy Power Spender, it buffs our next Crusader Strike by 120%. So that's what makes Crusader Strike do so much damage and healing. Basically, outside of this rotation, you're going to see a very, very normal Holy Paladin gameplay where I'm spot healing with Word of Glory and Holy Shock, and then during AC, you're just going to see me blasting DPS. So right here, you'll see I haven't actually popped AC, but I do see that I have 12 stacks of Awakening. So I know that I will have an Awakening proc, so I end up just sending Avenging Crusader right there. One thing to remember is that the actual Awakening proc deals a massive amount of healing. And the reason it does so much healing is because it procs Hammer and Anvil because your Judgment is guaranteed to crit. So if you have Virtue out when you proc Awakening with your Judgment, it's going to full heal the group no matter what their health is. It's basically a group-wide lay on hands. It's really important that you utilize that and make powerful uses out of that. So you'll see right here, I get Virtue out, the whole group is getting damaged, we're all pretty low, and right here, I'm just going to press Judgment, and boom, entire group full healed. So keep in mind how powerful that interaction is, and don't waste your Awakening procs on nothing. So I use both my Avenging Crusader and my Awakening there, and so I'm not actually going to have anything for when these Bowbreakers hit 50%. You're going to see as soon as they start thrashing, we're going to make sure right beforehand we top everyone up with Virtue, and then I'm going to use Divine Toll. So if you ever don't have AC, this is a build that uses Divine Toll way less often than the main build. The main build, you send Divine Toll as much as possible. This build, it's all about sending Avenging Crusader as much as possible, and then holding Divine Toll for these damage events. Now, that doesn't mean you should be sitting on Divine Toll for like a full minute. The most you should ever sit on Divine Toll for is like 20 seconds. Because it's a 45-second cooldown, you can use it very frequently. But it is important to remember that if you were to choose one or the other, it's better to hold Divine Toll for damage events. Unless it's like a very dangerous damage event, right? Like if it's something super, super scary, then obviously you're going to want your biggest super cooldown, which is Avenging Crusader. But most damage events can be handled with Virtue Divine Toll pretty easily. So that allows you to be a lot more aggressive with Avenging Crusader. But I find that when it's there, So right here, you're just gonna see, we pop our defensives, and then I get Virtue out. I spend my Holy Power on Word of Glory. I use Divine Toll to pop us back up, dispel the tank, and then we're just back to normal standard Holy Pally rotations, which is just prioing Holy Shock and Spenders. The AC comes back up here. I am going to send it at the start of this fight because I know that it's going to come back up for the dangerous part of the fight because this phase lasts a while. So we're just going to send it immediately as soon as we pull boss. The reason you want to send more ACs, even if there's not damage going out, is because it buffs all of our damage abilities by a lot. You're going to do a lot more single target damage. Again, you're going to want to weave in Spender CS, Spender CS. So you're going to see me doing that a lot. Got a little bit of an awkward boss movement here, but that's okay. And then I'm just going to skip forward to where the damage events actually start kicking in on this boss. So here, I'm going to, obviously, you want to let a few ticks go out before you press Virtue. And then I'm going to press Virtue here. I'm going to use Divine Toll, like I said. Always great to just rely on Virtue Divine Toll to carry a lot of it, like, damage points in this build if you don't have AC. Obviously, if you have AC, then you should use that. So right here, I have a decision to make. I know that I ideally would like to have Avenging Crusader for the burn because it will just help me do way more damage. But that being said, it's better to just keep your group alive. Like, healer damage matters a decent amount, but nothing is more important than making sure your group lives through intermission. So right here, you're going to see me. I have to make the decision. Okay, I don't really have Holy Power. We're starting to take a lot of damage. We need to live through intermission. I do see that I have 10 stacks of Awakening. So I'm actually just going to pop AC here, and then I will try to hold my Awakening for the intermission phase. So we'll see how that works out. I'm going to pop AC, immediately just full heal the group with Judgment, and then we're just, spending Holy Power into Crusader Strike. Holy Power into Crusader Strike, and then pressing Judgment. This is my Awakening proc, so this is going to do a huge amount of healing. So I do opt to just press it there because I need the healing, right? Look at how low we all are. Fuck it. I'd rather just full heal the group, get us topped and nice and safe. So I do go into this with basically no healing or no damage at all. That kind of sucks, but also we're totally fine and healthy. So that is what really matters the most. People are overvaluing healer damage a little bit too much right now. That's not to say healer damage doesn't matter, but when you have specs doing this type of DPS, it's just like getting a couple extra 100,000 at the cost of group safety is just not really worth it. So again, I'm going to kind of skip forward to the damage event portion of this. You'll be able to see, I'll just slow this down so you guys can kind of see my rotation. But I pop AC here, and then we're just going to look at this slightly slower. So he's casting Eternal Darkness. I probably should have waited to pop AC until Eternal Darkness actually began, but that's okay. Boss is already so low that I know it's not really a big deal, and I have Divine Toll still available. Here, you'll see me just Judgment, Crusader Strike, Judgment, getting them all on cooldown before I have to dodge here because I know that I'm not going to be able to stay in melee. Then I'm going to throw out some, one of my Empowered Holy Shocks, get a Word of Glory out, so now my next Blessed Assurance is going to do a lot. So now boss is coming back in, but obviously then Ingrid just phases, so that wasn't the best example of an Avenging Crusader rotation, but that did give you an idea of how I play it when I have to leave melee. I see a lot of Hpals leave melee, and then they end up just like not pressing buttons, right? They'll walk out of melee, and then they'll just not use anything because they'll be like, I'm a melee healer, I don't know what to do. They'll panic for a second. Most of our buttons are actually ranged, right? We have all of our Holy Power spenders are ranged. Holy Shock is ranged. Hammer of Wrath, Judgment, and then we have, Divine Toll. And Divine Toll will allow you to cast from range for like 6 globals, right? Because you press Divine Toll, then you can spend your Holy Power. You follow that up with triple Holy Shocks, with more Holy Power spender, triple Holy Shocks, more Holy Power spender, etc. And you're able to just play from range for like a lot of time. So it's important to remember that even when leaving melee with this build, we have a lot in our toolkit to keep the group up. And you want to make sure that you're not just having dead time with the spec. You want to make sure that you're consistently outputting healing. The rest of this is just a burn phase, nothing to really talk about here. We pull through the wall here. So if somebody's pulling through the wall, you got to be really careful and watch their health because they take a shit ton of damage. Daisha was actually the one that pulled, but Jamie ripped aggro. So he's the one who ended up taking the tank slash. I did sack the evoker because the evoker is the one that pulled, and I expected him to get the tank slash. But Jamie ended up ripping aggro. So because of that, I think it was like healer aggro or something. You can also, if people are pulling through the walls in your mists, which some people do in lower keys, I know it's not quite as common as in higher keys, but if that is happening, just be aware that you can rip healer aggro, and those guardians will anima slash from very far. So whenever that happens, just make sure you sack whoever pulls, and then you defensive yourself. So here I'm basically just going to pop AC, make sure I get Virtue out beforehand, and then just blast damage. And the more judgments and holy power spenders and crusader strikes that you can get out during AC, the better. You'll see most of my holy power is just spent on Shield of the Righteous. That's because I'm doing so much healing with AC that I don't really need to spend on Word of Glory. And Shield of the Righteous also procs Blessed Assurance. It's any holy power spender at all. So you'll notice I do that a lot. Then just good use of Virtue, making sure you're pressing it a lot, and using your empowered Holy Shocks. You're gonna go a long time sometimes without pressing Holy Shock. It's gonna feel very unnatural in this build, but just remember, like, this build does not play like regular Hpal at all. It's a completely different play style. You deprioritize Holy Shock in wings, you deprioritize Hammer of Wrath in wings, you deprioritize Holy Prism. All that matters in wings is just getting as many judgments and crusader strikes out as possible, and then making sure you just have good virtue timing. Those are like the two big things. If you can get good virtue timings and make sure that inside your AC window you're playing really well and efficiently, you're going to do so much healing and damage. So this pack's a little boring. I don't know. We don't pull anything into this. I'm just going to kind of skip ahead. Okay, this is a fun one. So we end up doing a double here. So we're going to take a look at this. Got to make sure you're getting your dispels out at the right time. I pop AC early on because I see that I've got an awakening proc coming up, and during the gather is some of the most dangerous times for the tank. So I end up holding my virtue because no one else is really injured. Doesn't really feel necessary. I am going to start getting virtue out soon, however. So here's an interesting thing that I do. Now, I don't always recommend this, but this is kind of a clutch play that you can do. If your tank is ever taking a shit ton of damage and you know that they're going to get beat up, you can place your weapon on them, your sacred weapon. Now, this can be dangerous, again, because you share health with your sacred weapon target. That's the new talent. That's the Spirit Link style new talent. This is one of the most dangerous packs in the entire dungeon for the tank. So what I do is I place my sacred weapon on Squish. And what that's going to do is make it so that I share. You see how much damage I just dealt to myself immediately. But that's going to make it so that he's basically unkillable. And we're just going to share health pools the entire time. So I pop my defensive to make sure that I don't take too much damage, right? I end up getting a bleed. So I bubble off the bleed so that I can share health with him while I'm bubbled. So this is basically just like I'm making him immortal. You see how much HPS I'm doing? 2.6 million HPS. That is literally mostly all that new talent. Very, very little of that is me actively healing him. It's mostly just the health redistribution, putting in massive amounts of work. So that interaction can be game-breakingly good if you use it well. It can also be kind of troll. It can get people killed, so you have to keep that in mind. Like, if your health ever gets transferred right before an AoE, that can be super dangerous. But that basically made it so that Squish was immortal this entire pull. And with this being one of the most dangerous pulls in any of these dungeons for tank survivability, that was a huge thing to be able to do. And it's a very, very valuable part of our kit that, when used well, can turn the tides. So keep that in mind. Here, I'm still just super scared for Squish's health because these Guardians absolutely destroy tanks with their anima slashes. So I'm just pre-virtuing in order to funnel my healing and to just make sure that Squish has as much DR as possible to handle these things. So here I'm going to sack him because I don't want him to take those anima slashes just raw. And then I get another Avenging Wrath proc, or sorry, Avenging Crusader proc. And we are just hard chilling in terms of healing. So doing this with boss is very, very scary, right? Doing this with boss is super dangerous for your tank because, again, it's that double guardian. So I had the option to place my weapon on Squish there again and do the same thing I did the previous pull. But the difference was this pull, I did not have any type of major personal survivability. Like I didn't have bubble, which is like the main thing that I would use to live this kind of stuff. So because I didn't have bubble, I wasn't really comfortable sharing because there was also this stinger that was going out and basically deals a bunch of damage up front. So if I was splitting my health with Squish here, I could have just died. Or I could have gotten him killed if I had taken too much damage, right? Because I got like multiple bleeds plus the frontal. It's just too scary to share my health unless I had bubble. So I opted to not share my health with Squish there. And instead, what you're going to see from me here is just basic Avenging Crusader gameplay. It's just super prioritizing Crusader Strike, Fenders, Crusader Strike, Judgment. That's all I'm pressing within these Wings windows. And then obviously keeping Consecrate down for damage. But that's pretty much it. The other nice interaction with Shield of the Righteous and Crusader Strike when you're in AC is that it resets your Crusader Strike cooldown. It reduces Crusader Strike cooldown by 1.5 seconds. So not only is Shield of the Righteous spending during AC beneficial for damage, and you typically don't need the healing for Mort of Glory, but it also gives you more Crusader Strikes. So it's actually increasing your healing in this particular circumstance as well. Overall, it is more healing to use your Holy Power on Word of Glory, but if nobody imminently needs the spot healing power, I think it's better to just spend on Shield of the Righteous to get more Crusader Strikes out and more Blessed Assurance procs for your Crusader Strikes. The rest of this fight is kind of boring, so I'm just going to skip forward. It's just dodge and locate. So this is a great Avenging Crusader pull, right? It's a bit chaotic. It's hard to stay in melee, but there is a bunch of just random damage going out on people on top of a big AoE. So you're going to see me immediately pop Avenging Crusader at the start of this pull so that I can make sure everybody is fully topped when this Staghorn does its AoE. So you're going to see very soon the Staghorn is going to start doing the AoE. You're going to watch me put Virtue out. There's Virtue to get the DR and then immediately top people with Avenging Crusader rotation. Once again, just making sure that you have good Virtue timings and are aggressive with using AC is going to be the huge difference maker for these dungeons. And you'll see I often just sit on Divine Toll. Like in the other build, you want to use Divine Toll all the time. But with this build, I'm using Divine Toll far less frequently because you want to make sure that you have Avenging Crusader usage very high, which often means that you end up needing to save Divine Toll for some of these damage events, or else people end up just getting in too much danger. So there you'll see this is an example of a damage event happening when I don't have AC, and that's when I use Divine Toll. Now I've got all these procs, because as soon as you hit Divine Toll, you just get so much power. You've got your triple Holy Shocks, you've got your strong Word of Glories, full Holy Power. You just have so much healing power after Divine Toll and during Divine Toll that you don't really need to rely on anything else. Here, AC comes back up, so boom, we're just going to go straight back into AC. The more AC, the better. You'll see just how much healing it's doing on its own without me having to really press anything, any like targeted healing. Like you'll see my mouse barely even hovers over people's frames. Like I spend so much of this key not worried about target healing at all, and instead just like generic AoE healing because AC just hard carries so much right now with Blessed Assurance. We're gonna skip forward here. I popped AC. Somebody died because they stood in one of these swirlies, so that was a bit unfortunate. But we B-res, we go straight to boss. One thing I will talk about is the transition here. So this is a boss that's very scary for Hpal if you don't know how to position right. One of the things I talk to people a lot about is Virtue. Most people assume I want to place Virtue on the person most in danger, right? But that's not actually the best way to play Virtue. Because Virtue is only a 30-yard range, you want to make sure that Virtue gets cast on the player most centered around your group. It should be positional who you put Virtue on. So what I like to do with this phase is make sure I get to the center of the room because people are always spread out on this fight. But if you walk to the center of the room right before he transitions at 40 and 70%. So you'll see me positioned here, and then I know that I am always positioned correctly for the best Virtue. So if I were to cast it, for example, on the dragon over here, it would miss. It might miss me. No, it would probably hit me, but it would absolutely miss the shaman that's behind me. But if I cast it on myself, it's going to go on everyone. So positional choices when it comes to who you virtue is super important. You'll see there, I was able to hit him and him, even though they're like 60 yards apart. I positioned myself well, and then I cast virtue on myself. And once you get everybody with virtue in this phase, it's very easy to heal. This phase is only chaotic when you can't get virtue out on everyone, or when everyone is spread out and you're not like centered. So center yourself well before this comes out, and then make sure that you're getting your virtue cast out the second the first damage event hits. So as soon as that first tick hits, immediately virtue. You want to spend some holy power, and then you'll see I always save divine toll for this. So straight into divine toll. Then I've got a bunch of empowered holy shocks and a bunch of holy power to spend. Super easy to heal it that way. And then you can just send Avenging Crusader on cooldown for damage, and you really don't need it for those phases. Here again, you're just going to see me popping AC aggressively, and you'll notice once again, Divine Toll is sitting available, but I'm not going to spend it because I know that this phase is coming back up again, and I want it to be up. Because of these Reavers, actually, I end up pressing Divine Toll early. Now, normally we would not be pulling Reavers into boss, but as you'll see, we were trying to go for the 2 chest. So because we were going for the 2 chest, we ended up pulling these Reavers in, and that ended up making this pull a little bit sketchier than usual, not to mention pretty poor positioning from us, which made it so that virtue could not hit a lot of players. So now what do, right? Because of that, we have 2 options available. Fortunately, AC is coming back, and now AC is available. So best option, just slam AC. However, even if I didn't have AC available here, I still have Aura Mastery, I still have Virtue, I still have Bubble, and I still have Sack, and Lay on Hands. So even if I had literally 0 throughput cooldowns available, I could still fully immune, give somebody a 40% DR, give everybody an extra 15% DR, and pop Lay on Hands on the player that dropped the most. So we could easily survive this phase without anything. But what you'll see is I actually do get Avenging Crusader back, so easy peasy. Make sure once again that I am positioned as close to the middle as possible. There's always going to be some way to get towards the center of the room. Obviously, the room gets more and more filled up, so it can get a little bit sketchy, but in general, it should be pretty straightforward, figuring out a way to get somewhat reasonably centered so that you can get virtue on your whole team. I get virtue out and immediately just start popping Avenging Crusader. Now, because this requires being in melee, I end up pressing Bubble, I believe. And yeah, so I'm just going to press Bubble, and I'm just going to sit in the middle here, let all this shit fall on me while I just slam my DPS buttons and heal the group. Bubble is insanely strong for that intermission right there. And I highly suggest saving it for the second intermission, because that's the one where you're going to have the most amount of stuff on the ground to dodge. So yeah. That's the fight. That's AC. Obviously, it kind of goes a lot against what we've learned with the Herald build. So with the Herald build, it's all about targeted healing. It's all about spending holy power and prioritizing holy shock. But then with Avenging Crusader, it's pretty much the opposite. You only want to prioritize holy power in order to get Blessed Assurance so that you can get bigger Crusader strikes. And your biggest prios within Wings is just Judgment and Crusader Strike, and just slamming damage as much as you can. Now, holy shocks take a huge backseat in this build when you're in Wings, and the biggest problem I see from players when they're trying to make their Avenging Crusader window strong is just throwing out holy shocks during it. That's pretty much the worst button that you can press. Holy shock, Hammer of Wrath, and Holy Prism are all basically useless during Avenging Crusader. So you want to be very careful not to be like slamming those during your AC window. Another thing that's important to keep in mind, get your virtues out before AC. Try not to be pressing virtue during AC. You want to make sure that your AC window itself is as capitalized as possible by getting all the other globals out first. So things like Consecrate maintenance, virtue, all that kind of stuff that you want up before the damage event. Make sure those are down prior to you pressing AC so that you don't have to press them during AC. And then lastly, paying attention to your Awakening stacks and your Awakening procs. This build relies on Awakening way more than the other build, mostly because the Awakening proc is shorter. However, it's much stronger in terms of the initial hit. So your initial judgment that's going to proc Awakening will heal your group like a lay on hands on everyone. And I know I mentioned this before, but I can't overstate how important it is to be paying attention to that and making sure that you're not wasting that. That's all for now, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I hope this was helpful. I will make sure to do a pug video soon so you guys get a more chaotic version of this and try to see what it's like when it's in a less coordinated environment. But it's generally speaking all the same stuff. When I pug with AC, I'm still super aggressive with using it. It's just a matter of making sure that your virtue timings are good and you're holding Divine Toll for these damage patterns where you need them if you're not going to have AC for it. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you guys on the next video.